So, as usual, we've had a busy month. I'll just give you an update on some of the things that have happened since our last update. On April 12th, we had the new Attorney General in Ontario, Caroline Mulroney, visited Six Nations. We took her on a tour, had a brief discussion with her in our Justice Department, and she also got a chance to tour the Six Nations Police Department and meet with the Chief of Police and the acting deputy. So it was a good day. It was in the morning of the 12th, and then the same day, in the afternoon, we had the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, Seamus O'Regan, visit us. He met with council for a short while, and we took him on a tour of the community, and he also toured the Old Mohawk Institute in Brantford at the Woodland Cultural Centre. On the morning of the 13th, Councillors Melba Thomas, Hazel Johnson, and myself attended the Grand River Leadership Prayer Breakfast that was held in Fisherville. And on the 14th, I attended the Easter service at Mohawk Chapel, and thanks to the committee that continues to have services there. On the 15th, I also met with Joy O'Donnell, who is the chair of the working group that is working on the cleanup of Mohawk Lake in Brantford. Helen Miller now has stepped up to be the representative on this working group. And on April 16th, I did do a short radio interview with the radio station in Caledonia, 92.9, about Bill S3. Then it was off to Toronto, and also did an interview at Element Radio in Toronto with David Moses, who is now an interviewer with that radio station. And we were in Toronto to attend a gala event that was hosted by Deloitte and a number of other companies, and they were presenting Best Managed Company Awards. And the reason we were there is that the Six Nations Development Corporation was a recipient of one of those awards. And congratulations to the team over there for doing another wonderful job and getting yet another well-deserved award. On April 17th, we had an information session here at the Community Hall on West Nile and Lyme disease. And, I think it's very important that people take the time to find out more about these diseases and some of the effects that they can cause. I was in Toronto as well on April 18th and attended a session with the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services agencies in that city, and they've asked us, Six Nations and New Credit, to get involved in the work that they're doing, and Council has agreed to do that. So we'll be working with them on the issues and the programs and the services that they provide, because a number of our community members do live in Toronto. I was then off to New York for a week, April 22nd to 26th, along with Councillor Mark Hill and Phil Montour. We were at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. While I was there, I attended a session that was hosted by Grand Chief Wilton Littlechild from Treaty 6, and it was on reconciliation through sports. And was pleased to be there and also to get an acknowledgement from the Grand Chief for getting lacrosse included in the Canada Summer Games in 2021. I was also able to make an intervention at the Permanent Forum to the members and made a presentation on our continuing land rights struggle. Back home on the weekend of the April 27th, we had a visiting minister from New Zealand. She was a Maori, Minister Nanania Mahutu. She had been in New York and she was in Toronto, and she had reached out to us saying she wanted to visit the Six Nations. So she did spend the day here on April 27th, and it was a good day. We met with her and toured her around, and also visited Six Nations Polytech, and I thank Rebecca Jameson. And we also went over to Everything Corn Husks in the village, and I want to thank Elizabeth Dogstater, who told her the creation story that she has on her wall there. So that was a good day. On April 30th, Matt Jameson and I continued the relationship with Samsung, and we met with the new president for Ontario, whose name is Edward Cho. And on May 1st, which was First Responders Day, I was happy to be present at the Community Hall along with councillors to serve breakfast to all our first responders and to thank them for the work that they do. We were happy to see members from the Six Nations Police, the fire services, the paramedics, the CHRT team, and the high-risk committee that were there. So thank you again for all the work that you do. The Assembly of First Nations held a dialogue session in Edmonton on May 1st and 2nd. It was called For Policies and Nations Building, and Councillor Mark Hill attended that on behalf of Six Nations. On May 3rd, it was my turn to host lunch with our surrounding politicians, so I hosted the MP Phil McColman and from Brant, and MPP Will Bouma from Brant, and Mayor Kevin Davis from the City of Brantford, and Mayor David Bailey from the Brant County. They all came down for lunch at the Burger Barn. So the next one will be in a few months in St. George, being hosted by Mayor Bailey. Later that same day, I was pleased to be at Five Oaks, just outside of Paris, to bring greetings to the Nations Uniting, who are part of the United Church. This was their 64th reunion, and I've been there a few times to welcome them to the territory, so I was glad to be there again. Also, May 5th, Audrey Paulus Bunbury, I want to thank her for attending an event in Brantford for us. It was the 26th-year anniversary at the Canadian Heritage Museum. And on May 5th, a bunch of us gathered in Veterans Park to celebrate Red Dress Day. Some of you may have seen some of the red dresses, and we were happy to be there and remember all the women that had been lost over the years. And kudos out to the library for having red dresses hanging. And in fact, they're still hanging there. I was then very honored to be asked by the executive chairman of ACON to take part in the judging of a scholarship that ACON gives out on an annual basis. So I was in Toronto on May 7th to take part in that judging. At the same time, later in the day, the Attorney General had reached out and asked us to make a presentation to a standing committee on finance and economics regarding juries in Ontario. They are looking at moving from using municipal property lists to OHIP lists in order to get people to sit on juries. So it was our opportunity to talk about some of the issues we see on juries and some of the issues in justice system. And Barb General, the Director of Justice, was able to be there with me and make that presentation. I then was in Niagara Falls, both in Niagara Falls, New York, and Ontario. I may have mentioned earlier that the First Nations here in Ontario have established alliance with some tribes in the U.S. They're calling it the Northern Tribal Alliance. So we came together at a border crossing summit in Niagara Falls, and we met at the Seneca Casino in Niagara Falls, New York on May 8th, and with the Department of Homeland Security members that were there. They came in and we talked to them. And then we went the next day to Canada, and we met in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and we talked with Canadian officials, CBSA officials, and we talked about the Jay Treaty and how Canada should honor it, and we talked about many things, and how some of the issues that our people face at the border and how we can work together to resolve that. So it's good to have this alliance with the U.S. tribes, and we're going to continue to do work both in Washington and in Ottawa, and we'll keep the momentum going and make the officials more aware of what's going on with our people, and continue to press them to recognize the Jay Treaty and to resolve some of the issues our people face when they cross the border. So that was that for last month.